Disneyland Paris has actually taken advantage, in the best sense of the word, of everything that went before it. I think the other point that should be made about Disneyland Paris is how much inspiration Walt took from Europe, whether it was Tivoli in terms of Disneyland or the great stories that became the Disney animated classic, Snow White and Pinocchio. And they're all European stories in the early days, and European authors. And then for Disneyland, the Neuschwanstein Castle. And I think the idea of Walt taking back what the Walt Disney Company now, taking back to Europe a park that represents in many ways so much inspiration that came from Europe, was pretty magical in a lot of ways, and makes us all feel good that we were able to do this, I guess, for Walt Disney.
As you can imagine, going into Europe, where there is such a rich history of the most unbelievable architecture and design and art that can be imagined, was, shall we say, off-putting at first, because much of what makes Disneyland special in California is the attention to detail and the beauty of our work, which we've painstakingly tried to bring, I think, some of Europe to Southern California in many cases. Now going back to where all this was taken from originally, a whole different challenge, I think, laid before us. And that challenge of what detail did we need to put in there to stand comparable with the great things that were down the street in Paris. And it was my goal throughout it to take the best of what we've done 3 times before in California, Florida, and Tokyo, and put it together in what I was determined was going to be the most beautiful and best park that we'd ever done. And I'm convinced that's what we did.
Main Street is an optimistic place. The reason we have a berm around the park is when you go under the train station, and of course, Marty Sklar explains this, and we still have this principle, is that the portals of the railroad station are like the gateways to a movie theater. So you buy your popcorn, you get your tickets and everything, just like you get your tickets at Disneyland, right? And when you pass into those portals, just like going to the seats on the left or the right side of the movie house, here at Disneyland, instead of finding a bunch of empty seats and a blank movie screen, you step through the screen. And that was a responsibility we had, was to put you into the film, to put you into an environment, to create a seamless world. All those main streets share that, and they share an optimistic, imaginative view of the world. When you walk into Disneyland, everything's okay. This is a town that doesn't have any crime. The vehicles run day in, day out. All the citizens are happy to see you, just like you're a local. It's a place like no other in the world. So those are the basic dynamics of all of our main streets. But I would say that the settings of Main Street, because it was derived from Walt Disney's hometown of Marceline, Missouri. He lived in the Midwest. He was a farm boy. And what he noticed as time was going on is that the little town that he remembered, little towns all over America were disappearing. Big cities were springing up in the 1920s and 1930s. Those simple, slow, small town life, things being made by hand, that was all disappearing. So when he did Disneyland, he wanted to create a nostalgic place that he remembered. And that's where the real Disneyland Main Street is. It's scale, it's very tiny, it's very intimate in its sense. It's a little small Midwestern town. The interesting thing, too, is Walt Disney in the story of Main Street showed, and you'll see this in Paris, too, a sense of transition from gas to electric. But you'll see gas lights on the street and electric lights. Even the vehicles. You have horse-drawn streetcars. That clip-clop sets the tone for it, even in the music that surrounds it. Imagine, Main Street, and you're in the movie now, there's no seats, It has this rich score. So you're hearing the music around you. You can sense the environment. Horses are moving at a slow pace. Even the engines of the cars, the mufflers we choose to get the vehicles to have the right put, 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 put kind of cute sound to them or charming sound to them. It's all nostalgic. It's not overthought. It has a simplistic innocence about it. How can we position this product in such a way that our audience understands without words, without dialogue, that they're in America, they can feel the optimism of America, and they can also feel the energy and excitement and sort of aggressive nature of what it's like to be in America and have that feeling. So everything from the billboards that are on tops of the roofs behind me, all of these things make up the look of the street. So when you walk in, you think you are on vacation to a foreign place.
The idea of Frontierland in Disneyland Paris is that we wanted to tell a story of the American gold rush. Now, people had heard of the idea of a gold rush, the phenomenon that took place in California in 1848, the idea of instant fortune, the idea of becoming rich overnight. Stories came out that nuggets as large as your fist of gold were being found. A lot of these were totally fabricated, but many of them were true. And they were true enough to bring much of the world, either by boat or traveling across the country by wagon, to what started in California and spread throughout the Southwest. What we decided to do was to make the icon the mountain, Big Thunder Mountain, where the gold strike took place. And then from the Big Thunder Mining Company, moving out from there, we began to establish where would the different city shops, the saloons, the restaurants, how would this have evolved in a gold mining town? As was the case with Thunder Mesa, we felt it was important to show other aspects of the movement toward the West, that it wasn't just for gold, but that gradually it began to attract families from the East who would put all their worldly belongings into a Conestoga wagon and head on out, trying to set up a farm, a ranch, these kinds of things. And we included that as well with our Cottonwood Creek Ranch and the barn, the whole domestic element of the West. We have Phantom Manor. Well, it was at one time probably the grandest residence in this whole upper-class neighborhood, and now has fallen into disrepair because a lot of times, as quickly as people earned or made their money, they lost it. And that is what you see perched on the hillside. And the spirit of the once proud owner is there to welcome us, as it were, to now his happy haunt, which is Phantom Manor.
Well, for the whole idea behind Adventureland for Paris, we have to go back to the original Disneyland in California back in the 1950s. At the time, Walt Disney was producing a series of Academy Award-winning documentaries called True Life Adventures. And it was from those documentary series of films that he pulled some ideas for the Adventureland area. In fact, the original name for that area was going to be called True Life Adventureland. and eventually it got shortened to Adventureland. Adventureland in Disneyland Paris is different from the other Adventurelands existing, the other three, in that, number one, it has a major presence on the hub. The other Adventurelands are quite, I would say, understated, approaching from the hub. That can consist of a bamboo structure with some palm fronds or something like that and a signage. We wanted a major presence and a portal, an entry, just like Frontierland has next door with their fort, Fantasyland has with their castle. So we created the bazaar. The bazaar is drawn upon heavily from the 1001 Tales of Arabian Nights stories. We wanted to give it a fantasy slant, something we could layer colors and texture and story onto. The original Adventureland was basically themed around the jungle, and for many, many years, that's all that it entailed and the Adventurelands that followed for Florida and for Tokyo were pretty much the same jungle theme with very little variance. So when time came to do Disneyland Paris, we wanted to expand that theme, and because adventure encompasses much more than just the jungle. So we have the jungle, of course, but we also incorporated the Caribbean, tropical islands, northern and central Africa, and arid deserts. We just tried to get as much fun in that land as we could. In our existing parks, the California, Florida, and Tokyo parks, we have a Tom Sawyer's Island, which is quite traditional for Frontierland. And we wanted to do something different. We came up with the idea for Adventure Isle, which uses those elements of Tom Sawyer's Island, the play areas, the caves, the tunnels, the fun things to do. And we combined it with some of the other existing attractions, like the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse, the Captain Hook's pirate ship, Skull Rock, and it's actually based on 3 Walt Disney movies, the Swiss Family Robinson, Peter Pan, and Treasure Island, all combined to make one attraction. Pirates of the Caribbean probably is the most popular Disney attraction ever created. Since its premiere at the original Disneyland in 1967, it remains the popular attraction to this day. The Disneyland Paris Pirates, we had the opportunity to make it just a little bit better, a little bit bigger, and to change a few things around that to make the story flow a little bit better.
Fantasyland is the land within the Magic Kingdom that celebrates the great classic fairy tales of all time and also the Walt Disney films that feature those very same stories. It is somewhat front and center stage within the parks, and it's the land that contains the highest degree of the Disney characters and the product that the Disney studio has produced over the years. And of course, has the castle as the icon and as the main entrance for the land. Fantasyland, I would say that the idea behind Fantasyland is this magical kingdom through which you can fly over moonlit London or experience the perils of Snow White or go into Alice's maze. So there's so many wonderful things, and we needed a context for it, and logically a kingdom, a medieval kingdom, was the right selection for the place that all of these stories would be told. Well, Fantasyland is really a timeless realm. We do have to select or imply some sort of time setting for it, so it's anywhere between the Middle Ages and the turn of this century. The European kingdom setting allows you to integrate and incorporate all of those different influences and different times in what we call a seamless way that allows these different geographies and these different time places to coexist with one another and not cry out for attention or call attention to themselves. Fantasyland at Disneyland Paris, we decided would be best if we took the various stories and clustered them together in areas that were representative of the lands that those those fairy tales take place within. So, for example, the stories of Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, and Mr. Toad all take place within an area that is evocative of merry old England. The stories of Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella take place in an area that's evocative of France. We have an Italian area with a Bella Notte Pizzeria, and we have an area that is alpine in its flavor, where we tell the story of Snow White and Pinocchio, and we have a marionette restaurant. We have areas that celebrate the flavors and the feelings of Hans Christian Andersen in Denmark and Holland. We have a windmill and a canal boat ride. So we just thought that there's an energy that's created by clustering these things together, as opposed to just randomly breaking them apart throughout the land. That there's that overused word synergy that brings those elements together and makes it even more fun and more imaginative. All of the ride vehicles and all of the rides in general are designed to accommodate children and adults. Like everything in a Disney park, it is not designed down to the child. It is designed up for the adult so that adults will enjoy it, children will enjoy it, and everyone of every age in between will find something of interest in the land. And that's why you see such an abundance of beautiful landscaping and wonderful, richly detailed architecture, the music, the food, table service restaurants. All of these are designed to appeal to a broad range of audience.
I would say the overall look for Discoveryland is really meant to be one that is timeless. What Discoveryland is, it's an actual collection of different futures. Different futures that throughout time everyone has dreamed and believed in. So this collection of futures is really what makes it timeless. Innovation is really the key of what Discoveryland's all about. So instead of dreaming about the future and calling it Tomorrowland, we decided to dream about discovering new ideas and innovation, and that's why we made the change. The difference between what has been the Tomorrowland and Discoveryland really is reflected in the name. We wanted to make something that clearly was a unique location. In the 50s, when Disneyland opened, there was always this great dream of the future. There was always this dream of something beyond, tomorrow. You know, it's like someday things are going to happen. Well, there's a funny thing about the future now, in that the future is the cliche is the future just isn't what it used to be. So the intent was actually go back to the concept of what is really important. And what's important is that man has always dreamed about the future. Looking at the other lands, we asked ourselves, what makes things timeless? In the other lands, you have a collection of locations. For example, in Adventureland, you have a Caribbean location, an African location. And what it is, it's a collection of exotic places. So, and this is true with all the other lands. So we decided for Discoveryland is let's take a collection of ideas. As I said earlier, every generation's had dreams of the future. Now, what we decided is to also pay a tribute to some of the great European visionaries, people like Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and Leonardo da Vinci and people like that. So throughout the ages, we've all dreamed of different futures, so why not do a collection of different futures? And that's what Discoveryland is all about. It isn't about one future, it's about many futures. There's actually a Jules Verne future. There's even a Michael Jackson and a George Lucas future, if you will. By doing so, it doesn't date itself every 5 years. It actually makes it timeless. Numerous references have been made to Jules Verne because he was a tremendous visionary and inspiration to us. And there have been numerous quotes, but one of my favorites, even though we might paraphrase it, was that if you can dream it, you can do it. And I think that throughout the course of Discoveryland, and in a bigger sense, all of Disneyland Paris, but especially for us, because we were in the process of creating something totally new. We did dream it, and we did do it. And that, again, is the most gratifying. So we take from Jules Verne, his stories and his ideas, but we also take his inspiration.
I think one of the most important details that we sometimes overlook in the design end, but I know it's really important on your end, is cast members, because literally what they wear, how they conduct themselves, how they continue the experience that we've created in wood and stone and plaster and everything is so important to what the guest takes away.
You are the story of what we're doing, and cast members are the actors in the scene. Nobody goes out of a movie theater saying that was the greatest set I've ever seen. Everybody comes out saying, I love the performance. And we at Imagineering put our work in your hands to maintain, to keep beautiful, to maintain the concept, the vision, the idea, and the spirit and the smile. And that's what I think it's all about.
If you understand the stories and you can keep that story going, we've led the people to the place, we've taken them on an enchanted journey up to your front door, and now you are the host because it's really in your hands.